All right, good morning, everyone. For those that I don't know, hello, my name is Jessica Davison. I'm a senior program manager in mission and strategy here at United Way, and I'm so glad you all joined us this morning for Coffee and Quality. So if you haven't already, please sign in our chat with your name and your agency. Again, really glad everyone's joining us here this morning for our September edition of Coffee and Quality. So as always, I like to start off Coffee and Quality just by sharing our simple ground rules. This is a safe place to share and learn. It's okay to share. It's a non-judgmental zone, being open and honest and respecting one another. And then also really encourage you to share and participate, share your knowledge, your experience, your opinions. We're all on a learning journey here together, centered around data, evaluation, and continuous quality improvement. So really want you to feel comfortable in sharing. And then, as this is a virtual space, really encourage you to share a video if you're comfortable, but if not, no worries, completely understand. And then also, as we kind of get into the discussion and the questions, we might have a moment, if we call on someone or ask someone to share their experience, it's always an invitation, not an obligation to share. Feel free to say pass if you're uncomfortable sharing. So with that, hope those ground rules are still good. Always open to refining our ground rules. Feel free to drop that in the chat. But we'll keep going. To my regular announcement in Coffee and Quality that we have a Coffee and Quality channel on United Way's Teams account. So if you haven't already joined the team, please drop your email address in the chat, or you can email me and I'll be happy to add you into our Teams account. We share resources, upcoming trainings, workshops, and it's not just United Way sharing, other organization staff share in there as well, just resources, looking for something, needing somebody's input. It's a great place to share. We also have a couple of other channels too in there. So it's a great space in our Teams account. But that's my commercial on Teams. Hope you'll join us there if you're not already. But I really want to kind of hand it over now into our presentation and our focus for today at Coffee and Quality. So you're in for a real treat this morning. I think it is safe to say that not everyone would consider themselves a data person. We all have different experience with data, unique perspectives, and varying levels of comfortability with data. That mixture can really result in roadblocks and barricades to effectively using data to communicate your agency and your program's impact. But I'm here to say that this issue isn't exclusive to you or your organization. There are others facing similar challenges. So today we'll hear from Carly Sessions with January Advisors and Samantha Sherman with Wesley Community Center, who will talk about that struggle and how to move through it. So with that, I will hand it over to Carly.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. As Jessica said, my name is Carly Sessions. I'm a principal at January Advisors. We're a data science consulting firm based here in Houston. I have my degree in social work and about 15 years of experience working with data. I'm really, really happy to be here today to talk to you all about data training. I feel really, really passionate about this area, and I'm excited to share with you why I think it's important and why I think that you should care about it too. I'm going to start today by talking a little bit about why nonprofits struggle with data. I think understanding some of these issues will help shed some light on some of the solutions I'll recommend later in this talk. Then I'm going to get to what an impactful data training program should look like and why data training, as opposed to other solutions, is something that you should consider. And finally, I'll talk about our data ambassador training program and how it works. Then we'll hear from Sam Sherman and have some time for discussion and Q&A. So let's get started. So what's so hard about data at nonprofit organizations? I think one of the hardest things about data at nonprofits is just the sheer volume of it. You have data that's being collected for a lot of reasons. You have grants that require special reports. You have reports that you have to deliver to your board every quarter. Then you have data that you need for yourself to know whether you're having an impact. It's very common for a single nonprofit to have 10 or more systems to store all of this information that you're using for so many different purposes. And then inevitably, there's gaps from what those databases aren't able to capture that you have to fill with spreadsheets and other paper files. I've seen this everywhere. It's not just your problem. This is a universal nonprofit problem. And all of that data living across so many places causes problems. One problem is that there is typically very little documentation for how your organization interacts with all of those systems. What data is stored where? When should it be used? By whom? For what purpose? Documentation that might help your existing staff and new staff learn about how they should be working with your data just doesn't exist. And because there's no documentation, how that data is being entered into your systems is not consistent and can lead to bad data. There's also usually no documentation on pulling data out of your systems. This part is also important because you usually have to align data across all of your multiple systems and clean up any bad data that was entered in the first place from not having documentation. So your staff is downloading data from multiple databases. They're comparing spreadsheets, sometimes by eye, looking from one to the other to figure out how they align. They're summarizing data, sometimes by picking out and adding up specific numbers in a column and then putting that data into a new spreadsheet. And they have to do this regularly, like every month or every quarter, and it's really annoying. But beyond being just annoying, it's also a flawed process. When you're doing anything by hand, it leaves room for human error. And when you somehow have to remember what you did by hand a month ago or 3 months ago, and then try and repeat that process exactly as you did with so many steps, it's very easy to make a mistake or do something different than you did last month and end up with bad data. And you're not just doing this for one report, you're reporting your data to multiple funders who have different requirements, and that leaves a lot of room for error when you don't have any of those processes written down. So just to recap, so far we have a lot of data living in a lot of places with little documentation on how to work with it. Let's make it a little more complicated. Let's talk about jargon and abbreviations and acronyms. You might talk about your program one way and your staff might talk about it a completely different way. And you can see this in the data. Is a participant the same as a client? Who knows the difference? And then there's context. The language you use to give your data context and meaning is also important. What are your numbers telling you? Those numbers of clients you've served or the number of job trainings you've provided. Is your team aligned on what it means to improve? This lack of a shared language makes data even harder to work with and really hard to work with for anyone new that's coming into your organization. And when these abbreviations and acronyms and context aren't documented anywhere, it's very challenging to know what you mean by participant when you're just reading a specific report or even knowing how to interpret those numbers of participants that you're reading on that report. All of these problems are a lot for your staff to deal with. It's hard for them. They are busy. They lack the confidence and sometimes power to make changes to their data or the way they interact with it that might make things easier for them. And instead, they make decisions on the fly to solve their immediate needs. So for example, if they're tasked with collecting a specific piece of data that doesn't seem to have an obvious place in one of their databases, instead of asking to add that data point to a database or find out definitively if it's already being collected somewhere, they create a new spreadsheet. They're solving for the short term and not the long term. And this particular scenario of creating spreadsheet after spreadsheet is happening a lot at your organization. And what's happening less are conversations with your staff about all of the data they're tracking in spreadsheets and if there's anything that can be done about it. The problems that I'm sharing with you today are first of all, not exhaustive. It's not all of the problems that exist with your data, but I'm not sharing them with you to make you feel anxious or overwhelmed. You already know they exist. You experience them every day. You're familiar with them. I'm sharing them with you today because there is something that you can do to make them better. And this is where data training fits in. So first of all, why data training? Why not just hire an outside consultant to come fix all of your data problems? Well, the problem with hiring a consultant to fix these particular problems that I'm talking about is that you can't just do it once. If you have someone come from outside your organization to document all of your data procedures or create a data dictionary, as soon as they finish the job, which by the way would take a very long time and be very expensive, it would be out of date. Every time you get a new grant or work with a new client population or update an existing program, you have changes that need to be considered and documented. And I'm not saying there's not a role for consultants to play. I work at a consulting firm. There is certainly very cool things that can be done with your data that require the expertise of a consultant or a data scientist. But what I am saying is these particular problems I've described today can be solved internally through data training. Data problem solving is just a muscle that your team needs to build in order to be able to recognize these problems and start solving them. So you might be thinking of data training as putting your team in a computer lab and teaching them Excel. And I just want to say that's not how we think of data training. That's Excel training. So don't worry if you've had past trauma with a certain spreadsheet. Data training is much more holistic than this. So how should data training work? Well, most importantly, data training should increase the skills and knowledge on your team. That includes increasing data literacy so your team can understand your data, what it's used for, what it means, how it works. But it also includes reconnecting your team with the why behind your data. Why are you collecting data in the first place? How does each point you collect inform your work and communicate your impact? It can be easy to lose track of this why when you are collecting so much data. Your team just needs to be in the habit of asking good questions about your existing data and any new data you decide to collect in the future. Again, why are we collecting this? What can it tell us about what we're doing and what changes we want to make? So first of all, good data training should first and foremost increase skills and knowledge. But good data training should also heavily focus on process. Data is the result of process. That means when you have process, when you have bad process, you are going to have bad data. And when we think about a good data training, we think that it should heavily focus on data process. What should a consistent data process look like? How do you document it? How do you follow it? Even if you are working with a dozen databases, having a clearly written, repeatable procedure that your team can follow will make your data better and easier to manage. Data training should also involve a cross-functional team, both across your agency and up and down. Having staff who are experts in different areas of your organization can help your team learn from each other. It gives them the opportunity to see how other groups have solved similar problems and share outside ideas on how to solve new problems. And when you include frontline staff, managers, and executives as part of the training, it lets everyone know that we all have a role to play in improving our data. Involving everyone also plays a big part in team building. It's easier to work on a hard problem when we feel like we're all in it together. And when leadership sets a tone that this is a priority, it sends a message to the frontline staff and managers that thinking about data and improving data is something that will be valued and supported, which frankly might not be something they have felt before. So a data training program should be inclusive. Finally, the focus on data shouldn't end when the training is over. The training itself should start to establish routine and start to build those muscles. But the real important work happens after the training is over. Staff should continue working together as a team, exercising and building those muscles. And the training program should prepare them for that. They can meet regularly to improve data and help resolve new issues as they continue to work together as a team. So that brings me to the Data Ambassador Program. What is the Data Ambassador Program? The Data Ambassador Program is a training program focused on data literacy, team building, and process. We help build capacity within your organization and give your team the knowledge and confidence they need to solve data problems in the future. Over the last couple of years at January Advisors, we worked on several data strategy projects that led us to recommend a training program. The nonprofits we worked with were dealing with data problems that, of course, we as consultants could have gone in and solved ourselves, but that did not feel right. It didn't feel like it would last, and we wanted something different. Instead, we wanted to teach these organizations how to solve some of their problems themselves. We didn't see any companies that delivered data training in the way that we thought would be effective for solving the particular problems we were seeing. So we felt like this was a great opportunity for us to help nonprofits with a new type of training. I'm a social worker. I learned how to work with data while practicing social work, but I recognize that not all social workers and nonprofit professionals feel as naturally connected to or motivated by data in the way that I am. I know that your staff do what they do because they care about the communities they serve. They feel connected to the people they work with and serve and feel like they can make the greatest impact through that work. I think it's really, really important to hold on to that motivation throughout data training. And the Data Ambassador Program is designed to build upon that motivation. We focus our training on how improving the way you work with data can have a great impact on the clients you serve. We do not deliver a single piece of training content without directly connecting back to the actual work that's done every single day. We're meeting your team where they are, and we're doing that intentionally. Data is not a foreign concept that doesn't have anything to do with your work. It's not just a number that lives on a spreadsheet that's pulled together for a report. Data has purpose and meaning and can provide real insight and have a direct impact on the clients you are serving. And that's something that we teach your staff during our program. So how does the program work? We start with an initial 2 to 5 week planning phase. In these first few weeks, we're meeting with leadership and some staff members to learn more about your team, their data skills, and what data problems they struggle with. Once we're clear about what problems we're trying to solve, we spend some time putting together a custom curriculum. The curriculum is like a roadmap for the training. It includes rough agendas, learning objectives, homework assignments. While we work on the curriculum, we're also working with leadership to identify who will participate in the program. We've learned that the most successful data ambassadors are the ones who have the most knowledge about your organization. During the program, we think a lot about existing organizational processes, and so it helps to have some data ambassadors who are very familiar with your organization and your programs. I also want to add that data ambassadors do not have to consider themselves data people. They do not have to have any specific data experience or knowledge. They just have to want to participate in the program and be curious about the role data plays in their work. And finally, we also develop a knowledge management system during this planning phase, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a minute. The training period itself runs anywhere from 9 to 12 weeks, and during this time, we're focused on a few things. First is a targeted data training. Our data literacy modules cover skills like understanding and interpreting outputs and outcomes, how to develop data dictionaries, how to document procedures, how to develop new metrics that measure the impact of your program. Each lesson is followed with time to practice the skill we are teaching. So for example, after learning how to build a data dictionary, we are building a data dictionary for your organization. After learning how to document procedures, we are documenting procedures for your programs. We're documenting institutional knowledge that hasn't been documented before, which has been very exciting for our ambassadors. We hear comments like, I've wanted to document this stuff for years, and I just told so-and-so that we needed to write all this stuff down this morning. I can't believe we're getting to do it now. And I say this because you should know that the importance of this work is not lost on your team. They get it. So now all of this newly documented institutional knowledge needs somewhere to live, which brings me to the next part of the training, knowledge management. When we're producing a lot of content like a data dictionary, a data index, or procedures, then we need to think about where all of that knowledge will live and be maintained after the program is over. I mentioned that during our planning phase, we spend some time developing a knowledge management system. And we do that before we even start the program so that as we're developing all of the content, we can quickly store it in its permanent home. We want to avoid putting it in another spreadsheet. And the specifics of the system are dependent on what exactly we'll be documenting during the program, but the system itself is always capable of expanding and storing any additional information you decide to document in the future. The two knowledge management systems we've created so far were built in Microsoft SharePoint because both organizations already had licenses, but we could work with any knowledge management system. Another one I really like is Confluence by Atlassian. There's also Airtable and many others. During the training, we teach your team how to use the system and how to find information. But as you might imagine, it takes longer than a few weeks to document every procedure or data point at your organization. So this system becomes a really important tool for your ambassadors to use as they continue to work after the training. One of the most important parts of the Data Ambassador program is its ability to last beyond the length of the training. Not only do we want the data ambassadors to continue the work they started during the program, but we also want them to feel empowered to think about data more broadly at your organization. So it's important that we set up an infrastructure that can support that work moving forward. And this is where the Playbook comes in. The Playbook is a document co-written by data ambassadors that maps out the future of the program at your organization. And we spend the second to last couple of weeks of the program working on it. The Playbook includes things like how often meetings should occur, who is responsible for scheduling them, how to determine if the meetings are effective. And one of the goals, honestly, of this Playbook is to think about every possible point of failure before the training is even over. It's really easy to just not schedule another meeting if you're not sure what the next meeting is going to be about, or you can't remember what you needed to work on. But if we do some of that hard work in advance and get really clear about the purpose and goals of those meetings, and even who is going to schedule and lead the next meeting, then it becomes much easier to continue. I know that you have a lot going on at your organization and data is not going to be your primary focus, but it should be something that you think about regularly. And the Playbook is designed to help the data ambassadors think about how that can actually look in practice. How can we really be data informed and data driven? And your data ambassadors can help you do that. We finish every data ambassador cohort with a graduation ceremony, and graduation is really important for a few reasons. First, it's an opportunity for the ambassadors to show off their hard work to colleagues who didn't participate in the program. They talk about the skills they learned, all of the institutional knowledge they documented. They give a tour of their new knowledge management system. And it's cool for others to see all of the things they worked on. It's also been a time where leadership has praised all of that hard work and really validated the importance of that work and the organization's dedication to continuing it in the future. Finally, at graduation, ambassadors feel a real sense of accomplishment. This program is a great team building experience, and people get really excited about data and their jobs in areas that honestly may have been a drag to them before. So graduation is just a really nice celebration of that excitement and accomplishment. We also want to make sure data ambassadors feel supported after the training is complete. Right now, we're available for all data ambassadors to communicate with us via email and Slack, and we attend data ambassador meetings whenever we're invited. Of course, since we're talking about data, we also want to know if our own program is successful. And so we use data to track that. We do an evaluation where we assess people's levels of data literacy before and after the program with some guided questions geared towards the specific training they have received. In general, everyone makes improvements. We see this in the survey, and we see it in testimonials of what people say about the program. So for example, one data ambassador who's getting their MSW said, "I feel like this course is everything that our research methods classes should be, easy to digest, exciting, and empowering." What a compliment that was. Another ambassador says, "This work has helped us bring greater focus to our data than ever before." Another fantastic compliment. We hear a lot of nice things about this program, and we know that it's making a difference in these organizations, and it's incentive for us to keep going, to keep offering this program and keep trying to make it better and better. If you're familiar with continuous quality improvement, which you should be since you're here, then you know it's human driven. Your staff, the humans at your organization, are the ones working with your data and finding ways to leverage it. The Data Ambassador Program is a way to level up the humans at your organization so they can better support CQI. If you're new to CQI, then data ambassadors can help you put these principles into practice. And if you're experienced, then data ambassadors can help you incorporate new data practices and strategies into your existing routine. Organizations often talk about being data-driven or data-informed, but what does that really mean? What does that really look like? The Data Ambassador Program is one way to put it into practice, and we can help your team learn how to think about data and use data to inform the work you're doing every day. So now let's talk about our data ambassadors cohorts. So far, we've facilitated this program with 3 incredible organizations and have trained 31 data ambassadors. Our first cohort actually started right after COVID-19, so all of our implementations have been remote, and we've been really happy with how they worked out. Our first iteration of this program was with Catholic Charities in the summer of 2020. Catholic Charities runs more than 15 programs and serves thousands of people across 10 counties. They wanted to use data as a shared language across their programs. They wanted to know what data they tracked across the agency, and they wanted to complete common tasks more efficiently. Their data ambassador program was all about institutional knowledge. We trained 13 data ambassadors over 11 weeks and helped them create a data dictionary, a data index, document procedures, and store all of that material in a new SharePoint knowledge management system. Halfway through our Catholic Charities cohort, we implemented office hours. We noticed that some staff were struggling to carve out enough time to work on homework assignments. And so we tried having pre-time blocked time on their calendar in the form of office hours where they could work on their homework and ask any questions about the material covered. And this worked out really well. We heard great feedback about it, and the ambassadors just wanted more office hours. So now we include weekly office hours as part of our regular curriculum. Continuously improving. I actually went on maternity leave shortly after Catholic Charities, so our second cohort didn't start until early 2021, and that was with Wesley Community Center. Wesley provides social services to families in the near north side and throughout Houston. They wanted to build data skills across their team, document common procedures that they could use as a reference for training new and existing staff members, and they wanted to develop program metrics to measure the impact of their work. We trained 10 ambassadors over a 10-week curriculum, and I'm not going to say too much more about their program because in just a few minutes, we'll hear from Sam Sherman at Wesley, who's going to share more about their experience in the program. Finally, this summer, we started a 9-week curriculum with Avenue CDC. Avenue focuses on building affordable homes and strengthening communities in Houston. This week is actually week 5 of the program, and we focused their program on data literacy and outcome metrics for their community initiatives team. Prior to actually starting their data ambassador program, we worked closely with Avenue to develop a set of outcome metric recommendations to measure the impact of their work across 7 program areas. So their data training program is a little unique in that part of the training is dedicated to understanding and interpreting those specific outcome metric recommendations that we developed prior to the program. The other half of their training is in support of the skills and knowledge they need to better understand those outcome metrics, which includes deep dives into outputs and outcomes, quantitative and qualitative data, and how to document procedures. I know that I've shared a ton of information with you today, but what I want you to take away from this presentation is that the struggles you have with data are common. You are not alone in experiencing them, and you can do something about it. You don't have to live in this place of data frustration. You can increase your team's data literacy and skills, and you can have a good time doing it. I've seen it. We've done it several times. Yes, it takes work, but it can also be fun and uplifting and very, very rewarding. I want to quickly share my contact information with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if it's about this program or data training in general. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm happy to chat anytime. Before we go into Q&A, I'm gonna pass it off to Sam Sherman, Chief Program Officer at Wesley Community Center. He's going to share a little bit more about their experience in the Data Ambassador Program.
Thanks, Carly. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay. As Carly said, I am Sam Sherman. I am the Chief Program Officer at Wesley Community Center. Wesley is a community center located in Houston's north side, so we're just north of downtown. Our mission is to invest in the potential of individuals and create opportunities to strengthen families and build communities. Our services are a broad spectrum of services, like many other agencies in town. We serve from 6 weeks old up to 106 years old. We have early Head Start, we have a pre-K program, a senior program, a food pantry, emergency financial assistance, and a financial opportunity center where we help folks through education and coaching become more financially stable. And so with all of these programs, data has been a challenge for us for a long time. Just a second. Wesley has, so I wanted to start by saying a little bit about why we struggle with data. At Wesley, we struggle with data for lots of the reasons that lots of nonprofits struggle with data. First, priorities, right? Helping staff understand that data is a priority can be hard. When your job is to serve clients, when your job is to enroll students into an early Head Start program, that is so critical, and it is where your energy goes. And so it's about working with our staff, right, to understand that this also needs to be a priority. And so that's often a struggle for us. Consistency is another big struggle. So getting the data in consistently so that it looks the same no matter who puts it in. That's a big issue. The quality of the data is a struggle for us, making sure that it accurately is telling the story of what's happening, which gets to one of the other ones around telling a story, right? We want our data to tell a story, and that it can be a struggle. Working with folks to understand how can your data tell a story, and then the staff buy-in. Folks do the work of a nonprofit because they want to make a difference. They want to make a difference in the lives of others. And asking somebody to spend, 10 hours of their week putting in data can sometimes feel like, but that's not why I'm here. That's not why I love my job. Jessica said in the beginning, not everyone is a data person. And that applies to most of the folks in Wesley's building. And so that's a real struggle. So how do we work with our teams to help them understand the importance of the data? And how do we connect those dots for them? And I think one of the other struggles at Wesley is that, Carly mentioned this, the data lives in so many different places for so many of us. So Wesley really has experienced a shift in our data because of the Data Ambassador program. It's made a huge difference in how our teams approach the data and how as an agency we approach the data. And it really started with the team that we selected. We selected 10 members, and there was somebody from each of our program areas who serves on the Data Ambassador team. So to Carly's point, we had folks from all different levels. We had frontline staff, we had program managers, program directors, and from all of our program areas. And it started with the mission statement. The team has a mission statement. And at Wesley, our Data Ambassadors mission statement is to create a collaborative of data-focused individuals that support Wesley Community Center by creating a treasure trove of knowledge that can help improve operations and communicate the story and impact of the organization. And that's it. Like, that's what you want for your organization, right? That's how you want your data to be seen. In the very beginning, that's how we started the Data Ambassadors program with Carly, is Carly helped the team develop this mission, which leads everything we've done since then. I think one of the other things about the Data Ambassadors program is having Carly facilitate, having an outsider facilitate who understands nonprofit work, who understands sort of the climate, what you need from your data, and what it means to do the work. So she brings that fresh eyes, sort of a new perspective, and helps the team pull back a little bit, right? And so I think having that for Wesley was critical in terms of getting this program launched and moving it forward. That, as Carly was talking earlier, I was thinking, like, what about that it makes so much sense for us? And it feels like it helps people get out a little bit of it. And in my head, I was thinking out of the muck, like, the data, you can kind of get stuck in the data and get frustrated. But I think when there's someone facilitating who helps draw you out, helps the team open up. And when the team communicates with someone from the outside, it looks different. They say it differently than when they say it to someone who's in the inside. And so I think that helping folks kind of get a higher level view of the data was so helpful for us. So I think, Carly mentioned our graduation. So at the graduation, our Data Ambassadors team really got to talk about what the wins were for the program for Wesley. What were the wins for being part of that 10-week program? And they really can, there were so many, and they can kind of be synthesized in these 5 different points. First was the technology, helping our team more deeply understand the technology available. So better understanding our agency database, Apricot. Learning to use SharePoint. Most of us had never used SharePoint ever. And so being able to use that as a collaborative workspace was so incredibly helpful. You know, one of the team members at graduation said that they saw SharePoint as a great tool for organizing our information. And I think that has been really critical for us. And being able to expand some of the technology and make it more ingrained in the Wesley culture across sort of the program areas was a huge win for us. I think cross-program collaboration. So we had folks from all of our program areas. We can get so focused in on what we do. We can get so focused in on enrolling kids in the early Head Start program, right? Helping folks get jobs through resume skills, whatever it is our role is. But when you're in a group like this, you start to realize that the data runs across the programs. What are the metrics we want across the programs? What are the things that everybody's doing? And are there ways to do it better? So as you have folks all thinking and talking, you can really start to problem solve and critically think about how could we do this better across programs with some fresh eyes and new insight. And then the shared commitment. Again, that cross-program team is so important. I'm going to just keep saying that because that was so important for us, right? So that now we have somebody in every program area at Wesley who is committed to this, who understands this, and who can share this. So the other is the quality. So being able to write and complete the clear procedures consistently to ensure the data quality. So now there's a place for folks to go that is this shared knowledge base in SharePoint for us to say, you know, oh, I'm doing this for the first time. Oh, we're giving out laptops to GED students. Where do I put that? How do I track that? Now there's a clear place to go instead of calling up someone else in the building and saying, do you know how to do this? And they may or may not really know how to do this. Now there's a place to go and find that information. And then I think that the last one for me really was that they're data ambassadors in the true sense of the ambassador word. They're now, our data ambassadors are now sharing their sort of new knowledge and for many of them new love of data with their teams. They're helping within their team meetings to reference the data, to make sure it's staying part of the conversations and to really talk about the importance of it all, which really does help with CQI then, right? So now we have inserted in every team somebody who is really enjoying data more than they ever did. And that helps our CQI process flow so much more smoothly and so much easier when we have those ambassadors within the program areas, all the program areas. And it's really giving them a shared language to do all of this. And for Wesley, we have some next steps. So the work didn't end just because Carly moved on to work with Avenue. So for us, it continues. So we continue to document procedures. In 10 weeks, we did not get them all done. We made a great start and we have work still to do. So that is our work now. The team continues to meet. We have small groups that meet and we have a large group that meets, and we continue to work on the procedures to get things into SharePoint so that we have that knowledge hub for all of our staff. Continuing to fill gaps in the data. We continue to be surprised by the things we don't really know how to track or the things we'd like to track that we're not tracking. So to get rid of the Excel spreadsheets, as Carla said, every time we hear of a new Excel spreadsheet popping up, we're like, wait, like how can we get that into Apricot? And then what is the procedure for documenting that? And building our Apricot capacity. So I think Apricot can do a whole lot more for Wesley than we have it doing. And so that's been a big thing for us, is learning how we can better use it and what it can do. And then I think the next thing for us also is adding new members. So this team is 10 strong. At some point, we're thinking probably end of this year, early next year, we're going to add some folks to the team. So continuing to spread the knowledge, to bring folks on board, to really learn about the program is really where we're going with this. And I wanted to say, I didn't mention the playbook a whole lot yet, but it's kind of all of this, right? So again, when we bring on new members, we do that through this playbook that has been created. We share the work through this playbook. Again, it's having a knowledge hub where stuff exists. So it's not going and asking somebody, it's going to the knowledge hub so we can all get the same information that looks the same. Wesley, our team has really valued this work. It has really shifted the way we think about data here. It's helped us really pivot a little bit with the work. And it's just been fantastic. I think Carly's been wonderful to work with. And I highly recommend the program to anybody, because nonprofits, we always struggle with data. It is always a struggle. And this really helps engage across the entire agency to kind of tackle this together, and to build the procedures and the processes so that the work can move forward sort of more consistently and with sort of a higher quality of data. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. There we go.
Great. Thank you both so much. That was really great information. Let's give them a round of applause, a virtual and physical round of applause. Before we go into questions, so would love if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or unmute or drop your question in the chat, and we'll be happy to bring that in.
Maybe this is for Carly or the person from Wesley. I'm sorry. What was the biggest surprise that your programs learned from like across programs about the data that they collected when you started talking about things?
Yeah, I think for Wesley, one of the biggest surprises was how many Excel sheets we had laying around in different places. And then I think the next big surprise was about how sort of empowering the technology can be when we use it well. And when we talk as a team, that they could really support each other a whole lot more and build a whole lot more system in place.
Thank you.
Scanning to see if anyone's next. Oh, somebody else unmuted.
Sam, kind of as a follow-up to that, was there anything that you guys found that you could stop? Any data points you found you could stop tracking as part of this process?
I don't think so. I think we found that there were some we weren't tracking as efficiently as we could. So there were things we could track better, and in a better way, which would save some time on the data entry, but I don't think there was anything we said, oh, we really don't need to track this. I don't think so.
Yeah. Carly, were there any other organizations you work with that identified data to stop?
I think there's a lot of duplication of data that exists across places and like slightly different versions of the same piece of data. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to consolidate, and especially when you're looking at the like slightly different language that you're using, you're finding that a data point is being collected multiple times, but in fact, it's the same thing. It appears to be different, but it's the same. So I think we see more of that than like, here's a data point that was collected, that we needed 5 years ago and that we don't necessarily need anymore. I think that seems to happen more.
Yeah, you got a lot of head nods from that, so that resonated with folks.
Question on you, Samantha, you mentioned Apricot, that's what we use. How did that incorporate, how did you incorporate just the lessons that you learned from data sharing in your Apricot? Did you make some changes in your Apricot and additions, and speak a little bit about how that worked with your current system and this learning?
Yes, so we did, there were some things that we did learn through about Apricot. There were things that we have since gotten off of spreadsheets and into Apricot, and there's things that we're still working on getting into Apricot. I think part of the conversation did lift up, like, these are things we really want to get out of the system and not pull. So we also have multiple other systems. So Apricot's our main system at Wesley, but we've got about 4 or 5 other ones we have to use for certain funders. So part of the conversation was also, how do we get as much of that into Apricot so we're just running reports from one place? And so January Advisors has helped a lot with that, thinking about how do we and how can we just pull from some of those databases into some reporting functions, and that sort of thing. I think there was some functionality in Apricot that we weren't using yet. And so we've gotten better at that. I think there were also some things we weren't tracking as efficiently in Apricot as we could. So over time, we'd kind of been doing like some I am not an apricot expert. I will just say that up front. So my language may not be accurate, but some things like we kind of created different forms and things like that also weren't efficient. And I think this conversation really helped us figure that out. Like there's a better way to track that in apricot if we do it this way or do it that way. And then also sharing, part of what we did also is when we looked at certain ways, like we tracked attendance in our after school program, our senior program began to think, oh, we need to be doing this differently. Like that looks good, or we want to try, like, so there was some of that too, like, oh, they're doing that. Like, how can we think about this differently now that we see that someone in Wesley's tracking it this way and the system's already created that?
I like that it's across programs. That's helpful because everybody kind of gets in their own little world, and yeah, cool.
Great. And I see 2 questions came through in the chat. So the first one goes to you, Sam. How has this synchronized and galvanized your team's efforts? Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I've seen is sort of that data ambassador function. Like they truly have become ambassadors of the data. I think they are excited by the data in a way they didn't used to be. And the team are empowered to share what they're learning across program areas, which is really exciting. I think as an agency, we can, January Advisors is providing also some high level work with us around some dashboards. So how do we use some of the data that's getting in the procedures that frontline staff are entering to now really create a clear picture with some dashboards of what is our work look like on a daily basis. A lot of this came for us about thinking about how do we tell the Wesley story, the client journey. How do we really do that best? We know at Wesley that so many clients move through multiple program areas, and we knew we weren't doing a good job telling that story. And I think a lot of the data ambassador work and the data ambassadors are now seeing that, like, how do we continue to track a client's full story through the agency, and then also supportive service as outside the agency. And I think that's been a huge win for us at Wesley and for our teams to now think along those lines.
Thank you. Carly, there's another question in the chat.
I see the next question. It's a really great question. So I'll say a few things about this. First of all, so I'm going to answer this question in 2 different ways because I think about long-term analysis of data in a couple of different ways. One is like a long-term analysis of the quality of your data, which is a big part of what we talk about at data ambassadors. And then the other half is like the analysis of what your data is telling you. So being able to use that data to inform your work. So I think once your data ambassador program is moving along really well, one of the benefits is that you have this expert group of people who are very familiar with the data that's in your organization. They're familiar with what's working, and they're familiar with what's not working and what still needs to be done. And so as a long-term effort, what you can do, and what January Advisors can certainly help with, is to work with data ambassadors over to continue to improve those problems that they are familiar with, right? It's depending on how long your organization has been in existence, it's going to take a long time to, have everything in perfect order, right? Like there's a lot going on. There's a lot to improve. I mean, even just documenting one thing like procedures at your organization can take months because of the sheer amount of work that you're doing. So one way to support this long-term work is to continue to work with data ambassadors to prioritize the work that they're doing, to sort of understand that, assessing data that you're tracking. Do you need to be tracking all the data? Assessing the processes around all that data. Is everything documented? There's a lot that you can look at in that quality realm. In the impact realm of your data, so one thing Sam mentioned is being able to put together things like really great dashboards that can kind of pull all of your data together that is currently living in multiple databases is a really cool after effect of knowing all of the data from your data ambassador program. So once you start to get your data in order and you don't have so many things living in these random spreadsheets, then you can put this data into a really nifty dashboard that can kind of give you a full look at your organization's data, impact measures that are specific to you and what you want to be looking at for internal work, for your board, for your other, for the community. And so I think that that dashboard and other type of data analysis work is helpful for being able to follow your data long-term on that side of it.
Great, thank you. We got some more questions coming through from the chat. So Sam, this one goes to you. How did training improve data quality for your team? And how are the staff that are not part of the data ambassador using the playbook? That playbook was really interesting part. And I have a follow-up question on that playbook, but handing it over to you, Sam.
Yeah, so I'll start with the playbook. So the playbook got rolled out in a staff meeting over the summer, an all staff meeting. And it's part of the continual work for us. So as we continue to add the procedures and bring in new data ambassadors, it's continuing to work with all staff to remind them it's there. And it's part of what the data ambassadors do as well, is within their teams, is to share that information on the SharePoint. And the playbook really helps the data ambassadors team keep on track, know what to do next. You know, it's kind of a group commitment to shared goals around the data ambassador program, that this is where we want to see the data ambassador program go. This is how we want to have it function here at Wesley. And so it's those shared commitments amongst the team. Carly mentioned it's, you know, it's even goes into the weeds to say, like, this is who's scheduling these next meetings to make sure it doesn't fall off. Because we all know at nonprofits, it's really easy for stuff to kind of fall to the wayside. And so it's helping us keep it on track, because there are specific people whose jobs it's to make agendas, to schedule the next meeting, to kind of keep it going and keep it fresh. So that's, the playbook's really helpful in that way for us. I think in terms of improving the data quality for our team, what that's really about is the procedures. So as we complete the new procedures in SharePoint, giving all staff a place to find them. So we stop asking each other as much and start going to the playbook, because we all know if you ask 5 people, they're all probably going to tell you 5 different ways to do it. So that quality really is about saying, you know what, we need to look in SharePoint to see exactly how we need to document that procedure, or that client interaction or that data point. And so it gives us that kind of clear way to do that. So the neat thing about the procedures as well, one thing that we find really valuable is there's I just lost the word. I lost the word. Exemptions, like this is a procedure, but sometimes it's not going to work that way.
Exception. Yeah.
Thank you, exception, Carly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because there's exceptions to lots of them, but that goes in the procedure. So when someone goes in, they can see this might be when you don't do it exactly this way. And so that's super helpful as well for the team.
Yeah, that's great. That really resonated with me around the, knowing that process, because as that saying goes, good data in, good data out, and you have good data when you have your process of that. So that really resonated with me. Thank you. All right, next question. So I think this could go to either of you. Is most of the data provided by staff, or is some of it client self-reporting data sets using online interfaces?
I don't see a ton of online interfaces where clients are going and entering stuff online. There are a lot of scenarios where like a case manager is working with the client and getting information directly from them. So they're like informing those answers. But I think most of the data that we see comes from systems that staff are entering data into.
Thank you. So Carly, again, it sounds like you all are able to provide data cleanup support. Is that included in the data ambassador program? And then we're also using Apricot and also have some redundancies in the system. Apricot, yeah.
Okay. So I like this question because it's going to give me an opportunity to talk about one of the cool benefits of the program, which is that we really are working on whatever data problems are highest priority in your organization. So before we start the program, we are doing a pretty in-depth assessment with you and some members on your team to figure out where the big problem areas lie. And if those big problems are in redundancy in your system or not having any procedures, then that's what we're going to work on. But there's not like a standard set of modules that we always provide for the ambassador program, because we know there's like a difference in what you want to be working on right now. There are some standard aspects of the program, like the playbook, like having the knowledge management system, because we're typically creating a lot of content that that is required for. But the other pieces, which is like, what specific skills are we teaching and what are we trying to get your team to work on, that can change depending on what your biggest sort of problem areas are. And so if it's data cleanup, then we're going to work on data cleanup, and we're going to write custom material about the system that you're using and working with, and how we can better have better data in there.
Thank you. And Carly, that maybe goes into the next questions that are coming up around, you know, can you share a little bit about the cost of the program, and, you know, how does that look like if somebody's really interested in wanting to take that next step into this?
If you're really interested, send me an email and we can talk about it. It really depends on the number of ambassadors that we're working on, how long the program is, how many sort of modules we're going to be working in, how much custom curriculum we have to develop. So it's really dependent on your specific program, but send me an email. We can talk about it. We can brainstorm and explore and try and make something work.
Great. Thank you. And can you drop your email in the chat again for folks?
Yes.
So they have that, because we have a question back to Wesley. Does Wesley have a method of follow-up with clients at intervals? And if so, how is that collected by staff member, SurveyMonkey?
Sure, yeah, we do. So it is a little specific to the specific program area, how we do that and what it looks like, but it's both is the answer. We use we use Teams here, and so we use the survey function in Teams a lot, particularly with our Financial Opportunity Center, our Thrive program. With our seniors, we're doing a lot of phone calls to follow up. It varies program to program, but we're doing both of those for sure.
Great, thank you. It's great to hear how other people are doing things and how that looks like at everybody's organization, because everybody's so different. Any other questions? I think we've got to the end of the questions in the chat. Really glad people are putting them there. You can feel free to unmute or raise the hand feature. I have a question though about that playbook. So I often hear, you know, oh, I'm a small nonprofit. Like, it's hard for us to formalize this. Like, why? We're only 2 people or 5 people. And then on the other end, like, we're so large. Like, it's so hard to get everybody on the same page. Like, everybody's going to do their own thing. So how does that playbook benefit a small organization and then also a large organization?
Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple of different things. So for anyone, it's helpful to write something down so you know how to do it the same way every time. Like, even for myself, even things that I'm just doing for myself, if I don't write it down and it's a really detailed procedure and it's involving something really important like numbers I'm reporting to someone else, then it's important for me to pull that data in the same way every time. This is not just something nonprofits do. Our team of data scientists and developers, they do that too, because it's important to get those numbers right and have them be consistent. Otherwise, how can you compare the data, right? Like, how can you follow it over time if you don't know that if you're comparing apples to apples? So that's one thing. So it's definitely important, large and small. I'm going to answer another question about the large organization that you might not have asked, but that I want to answer. And that when it's such a gigantic organization, I think there's like some hesitancy, because you're like, I have so many procedures here. How could I possibly write them all down? And like, why should I even start? Because I'm never going to be able to do it. And to that, I say, you know, the old, you know, one bite at a time thing. Like, really what you have to do is separate all of those procedures into very distinct process areas. And we do that through our process. We look at, we talk about boundaries and what this procedure is going to accomplish, and how is it not the one before it and not the one after it. And we take it a step by step and one procedure at a time approach. And you would be surprised at how quickly you can actually accomplish a lot in a short amount of time. I mean, with Wesley, I think we were working on procedures for just a few weeks. And it was like, I don't know, 40 procedures or something we were able to document in just a few weeks. And so that's, you know, if you continue to do that, if you have 10 people who are working on, one procedure a week or 2 procedures a week, it adds up and it goes quickly. And so it's important for the same reasons as at a small nonprofit and a large nonprofit. At a large nonprofit, it's also important because you're going to have other staff that are repeating those procedures, and they need to know how to do it too. So you're not just keeping it for yourself, but like you need it to communicate to others. And at both sizes, you want to make sure you have it, because when someone comes after you, you don't want to lose all of that treasure trove that Sam was talking about. I mean, it truly is a treasure trove of knowledge that you have living in all of your staff's head. I mean, how to do all of that work is really important institutional knowledge. And so taking the step to start documenting that and really get to it one step at a time is important. And we talk a lot in the program about not getting overwhelmed and just sort of like doing this one and focusing on this one this week and what can I do this week, and then next week I'll do another one, and not to think about the hundreds or more that you have to document, because that's not helpful. And you don't need to, because as long as you're making progress and moving forward, you're going to get there, and you're going to do a lot of good work.
Yeah, thanks, Carly. So we have another question coming through the chat, and I think this could go to both. So how many hours per week do you allocate for data ambassadors to work on data projects? And then do you formally update job descriptions to capture that piece?
I'll say this from my point of view, and Sam, you can say it from yours. So first of all, this is again dependent on the specific organization. We really look at how much time your staff has available and what's not going to stress them out. The last thing we want to do is stress your staff out. But it does take time to work on this work, and it's important to allocate a reasonable amount of time. Typically what we do is have 1 to 1.5 hours of training work at the first half of the week, and then about an hour of optional office hours at the second half of the week. And so I guess that's, 2 to 2.5 hours of work for the week. The benefit of the office hours, again, is that if there's homework, if the homework is to go write down one procedure, they can come to those office hours and get it done there. And they can ask me questions and I can help them work through it. And maybe they can get it done a little faster than they could on their own. And then the piece about the job descriptions is yes. So this is something that should be incorporated into job descriptions. It's something we talk about. I remember specifically talking about it with Catholic Charities, that this was that they were going to add this to their job description, because it's important to communicate that this is a responsibility. I think that this stuff can be more fun and exciting and informative than we typically think. And so I don't like to look at it like this is your responsibility and you have to do this, although it's important to say that because it is part of the job to keep track of this data and have quality data. But on the other end of it, having this group of people, right, having a team where you're all working on this together makes you feel less alone, and it's less of, something I have to get done, and something that can be very helpful to us in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I think what Carly said was spot on. I think at this point, in terms of time per week, it's significantly less because we've moved out of that training phase. I think in the beginning with the training, some folks had a steep learning curve around the metrics, around technology. And so they needed a little more time, but now that we're kind of level set a little bit, it's not as much time to maintain. The other thing I wanted to mention is one thing we had to do at Wesley is really think about who was doing what. So we have a CQI team at Wesley and a data ambassadors team, and we needed to separate them because folks on both teams. So when we started, we had folks doing both, a few people, because we don't have a huge staff here. We had to separate because it was too much required of one person to do both data ambassadors and CQI. So we did really have to think about where we were plugging folks into agency-wide initiatives, and we restructured some of those agency-wide teams over the summer to free up folks' time a little bit.
Follow up on that one. Are you looking now to merge or to have them kind of check in with each other so there can be some synergies across the CQI team and data ambassadors?
Yes. So what we're looking at now is quarterly having those teams meet together. So they will continue to run differently. So right now we're still very much in the documenting procedures phase of our data ambassadors. And so we're keeping the two teams separate, but with quarterly meetings is the plan. We kind of established that to make sure that they're talking and communicating. And there are folks who sit on both to cross information. But we wanted to not have as much of that, especially with our frontline staff. We wanted to really free up some of their time.
Yeah, no, definitely understand that. And I love the mission statement that y'all crafted. And so would love to know, that's the data ambassador's mission statement, but are you circulating that across your organization? How are you keeping that mission statement at the center of your work?
Yeah, so it was shared, as I mentioned, it was shared in an all staff meeting. And part of what we're doing moving forward is Wesley has quarterly all staff meetings. Is every quarter when we meet as an all staff, we're going to bring that back to all the staff and share the mission statement again and then update it again. I think there's more we can do to share that though. And as you asked the question, Jessica, I'm like, oh, but we could be doing this, this, and this also. So I think there's more we can do, but the team came up with a great mission statement and they're sharing it with the other staff members for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that I loved it. Like it just, that shared language, shared purpose is so important. We have it for our organization, the mission, what we're all focused on, but bringing it down to that data level really strengthens something that was like really eye-opening for me. So I'm really glad to hear that and hear what that looks like at Wesley as well. All right, so we've come to, I've asked a couple of questions that were kind of burning for me. So if there's any other questions or if I didn't see anything else come through the chat, Carly, if there's anything else that's come up for you that you would want to share out, or Sam, we're again very grateful and thankful for your time here today to share about your program and what your experience has been in your program. So again, thank you for sharing.
I'll just say one more time, I think that this, that the thing that I've learned through this program is that data can be improved. It can be improved relatively quickly just by giving some attention to it and giving permission to your staff to kind of give their attention to it. And I think it's fun and not something that's like foreign to them, right? Like when they come in and in the very first session, we're talking about this mission statement, they're already excited. They already have ideas of what they want to do. And it really helps form the rest of the 10 weeks. And then every week they get more excited and more excited and more excited about the work that they're doing, which is just contagious and a fun experience. And so again, I would just urge anyone, if you have any questions about it, if you are interested in it all, please send me an email and we'll hop on the phone or a Zoom and talk more about it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Carly. And I have a wrap up real fast. I dropped in the chat for everyone. So we'd love your feedback on today's session. Carly shared her email earlier, so please feel free to reach out to her, but would love your feedback on the session. So I gave you that link. And then we have two more events, 2 more trainings, workshops, however you'd like to call them, coming up. So we're really excited to be partnering with One Breath partnership on an upcoming data and dish on the inequities, on the shape of inequities in Houston. So that's going to be on September 15th, and you have the RSVP link there. And then our last coffee and quality session of 2021. Can you believe it? I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. Feels like we were just at January. But November, we'll be having our coffee and quality, and that will be by Kinder. And it's another combo where we have Kinder coming in, talking about their state of housing report and doing a demo of their housing dashboard. And then we'll have 3 organizations sharing about the work that they're doing, using that data and how it's really getting into their housing programs. So really excited for that one. Again, thank you all, giving you some time back, but big thank you to Carly and Sam. So glad they could share today. So thank you,
Jessica.
Hope everybody has a great week. Great rest of the week.